Good evening. It's Tuesday, the 6th of March. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. We open in Washington. Joining us now in the studio to discuss the Netanyahu-Obama Summit is Jerusalem Report Editor-in-Chief Matthew Kalman. Good evening, Matthew.
Good evening.
Now it would seem clear, really, that there are very major differences between the U.S. and Israel. Does this mean that if Israel should decide to launch a strike against Iran, that, number one, there wouldn't be any kind of a joint military cooperation with U.S. forces, and B, that Jerusalem may not be giving Washington any advance notice?
If Israel were to attack Iran without coordinating with the United States, there's no question that there would be a major crisis in Israeli-American relations. The two countries are strategic partners, and Barack Obama said just last month that Israel and the United States were in lockstep over their policy towards Iran. And as we saw from the meetings this week in Washington, there's been an enormous effort to try and coordinate the positions between the two countries. So if Israel were to act alone, coordination, that would obviously precipitate a very serious crisis in relations between the two countries.
Well, I'd like to ask you to elaborate on that. Just exactly how bad would that be, that diplomatic fallout? We went through something similar back in the 80s when Menachem Begin went ahead and hit the Osirak nuclear reactor. It caused a huge rift with the American government at that time under Ronald Reagan. But, you know, the relations were repaired.
Well, that's the problem here is in the deep. As you say, in 1981, Israel went it alone against Osirak and bombed that nuclear reactor. But Israel and the United States still remained great allies and great friends. What we need to know, and what I don't think we're ever going to know, is what exactly is going on behind the scenes here. The if Israel acts alone is a very, very big if. And my feeling is that they're not going to. My feeling is that what we're actually seeing is a great display of the good cop, bad cop. Israel has always said that in order for sanctions and diplomatic efforts to work, there has to be a credible military threat. And the credible military threat is represented this week by Benjamin Netanyahu, when he stands up in front of the AIPAC conference and he invokes the memory of the Holocaust, and he says never again, and he compares the time now to the time when the Jews asked the Americans to bomb the lines to Auschwitz and they refused. He's really bringing in the big rhetorical guns, and he's also bringing in the big military guns. The Iranians will be looking at Netanyahu and they will be saying the Israeli Prime Minister is prepared to attack. He's comparing us to the Nazis. This guy might be strong enough, crazy enough to go it alone. And what that does is it reinforces the diplomatic and economic sanctions that the US is trying to lead. So it seems to me that behind the scenes, despite the public disagreements, what we're actually seeing here is good cop, bad, and that's what's going to make the sanctions work. That's what's going to convince the Iranians that the Israelis are serious, and therefore they have to cooperate now with the West.
How much do you believe a role was played by the fact that it is an election year in the United States?
There's obviously Barack Obama's first energies are directed towards his own constituency and towards getting re-elected. That's what he has to think of first. He also has to consider that the Americans don't want to find themselves embroiled in a third major foreign war at the moment. They're already overstretched as it is, and they're trying to cut the military budget. So the domestic considerations in an election year for Barack Obama are extremely important. That's why it actually serves his purposes to try and put some distance between himself and the Israelis. It serves his domestic agenda to try and show himself as being much less tough about attacking Iran. But at the same time, what Benjamin Netanyahu's statements do is they keep that military option alive, and they may convince the Iranians that if they don't stop their nuclear program, then they may well be attacked by a crazy Jewish state fighting for its survival.
Matthew Kalman, Editor-in-Chief of the Jerusalem Post, thanks so much for sharing your analysis with us. Jerusalem Report, I misspoke. Jerusalem Report, thank you. Turning now to Syria.